Welcome everyone. We're going to show just a quick video to start and then we'll get started.
Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
Well, welcome everyone. Glad that everybody could make it today. We have the great honor of having Dr. Carter, who's the Associate Dean of Admission and Associate Professor at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. She is also involved in as the Vice Chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Emergency Department and oversees the Emergency Medicine Clerkship. She has her bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt University and her medical degree from University of Alabama School of Medicine, and completed her residency at University of Chicago, and she has since been there as a faculty as well. She has received numerous awards as medical educator by her peers, residents, and students. She was inducted in the Masters in Academy of Distinguished Medical Educators and has received numerous degrees, including the Leonard Toe Humanism Medicine Award and the Biological Science Division Distinguished Educator and Mentor Award for Clinical Excellence. Her research interest is the nuance of communication within the emergency department and developing curriculum and improving patient-centered physician communication. We're glad that she was able to make it today and honored to have her here.
All right, well, thank you for that introduction. I guess that's my cue to go ahead and get started. I'm so sorry that I can't see your faces today. I do love seeing the faces of students, and I spent a lot of time talking to pre-medical students, and really is my pleasure to be here with you all this evening. It's evening in Chicago right now, but I am going to start sharing my screen. And then I will proceed here. Hopefully everybody can see that. I hope I get some indication if you can't see my slides or if the slides aren't progressing. But I was asked to
We see them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was asked today to talk about the Pritzker School of Medicine and how to become a competitive applicant to Pritzker. And I will absolutely talk about that. But I think there's a lot of groundwork that I would like to lay so that you can potentially start thinking about how you will become a competitive applicant to many places, including the University of Chicago. So the title of this talk is Mission: Finding and Communicating Yours, Understanding Ours. And I hope that the importance of both of those things comes through. So I am the Associate Dean for Admissions at the University of Chicago. I have been here now for 20 years. It'll be 20 years in July. I am not from here, but I hope over the next slide to share a little bit more about me and my background and give you an example of really how you can reflect on your experiences, your personal experiences, and frame them in a way that really helps your development and evolution as a future physician. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to actually start when I was, I promise this will go very quickly, but when I was 10 years old, I moved with my family to a rural area in South Carolina. I'm not originally from Chicago. And my brother and I actually integrated a school in 1987. It was a private school. Those schools were oftentimes built to maintain segregation. And when I reflected on that experience, I learned a lot. I have taken a lot of that experience with me. But one of the things that I did learn is that within education, many within education maintain a very rigid idea of who can exemplify excellence and what constitutes excellence. And I knew that reflecting on that experience, I wanted to be an educator, and now I'm a medical educator who really defines excellence in diverse ways. And that's really what I do at Pritzker. So I matriculated at Vanderbilt. Here you see my graduation picture from Vanderbilt. And what I'd like to bring up about that experience was that was a very humbling experience for me. I went into Vanderbilt really unprepared for the rigor of that curriculum. And I felt that at least for the first part of my undergraduate journey, I was playing catch up. I would look at people and say, how do you already know how to do that? But what I learned from that experience was that I needed to ask for help early. And there were people who were going to help me. And I learned how to identify and develop relationships with mentors and advisors. And that has been critical along my journey. And then I just wanted to put my family up here. I am a busy clinician, and I have several different roles within the medical school, but I am constantly seeking to find that harmony between my professional and my personal life, and that is an ongoing that's ongoing work that I engage in. So now let's talk about where I'm going to take you on this talk today. I am first going to talk about mission. What is it? Why is it important? I'll move into talking about realizing and communicating your mission. And then lastly, the last part, I will talk about the Pritzker School of Medicine, who we are and what we value and what we look for in our applicants. So let's start with mission. What is it? Why it's important? So, I am going to be throughout this talk encouraging that reflection, that framing of experiences, so that you can, on your pre-medical journey, really start to understand what your individual mission is, realizing that this will evolve. Like, you are earlier in the process, and your own personal mission within medicine and how you want to make an impact will definitely evolve. But I really encourage you to start forming it now. And a mission should describe your purpose. It should tie in your core values. It should support the vision that you have for yourself. And it should be comprehensive yet specific. So that is what a mission is. Now, within your journey, now extending to when you are physicians, mission is so important because although being a physician is difficult, although the road to becoming a physician is difficult and rigorous. What we want is for you to have a sense of vitality throughout the process. We don't want you to sacrifice your ability to thrive in an environment because it is difficult. And so what you are going to have to do is really think about your own mission and, you know, your values, as you can see here in the individual context, your values, priorities, goals, and motivation that ties into your mission. And when you are looking at medical schools, when you are looking at jobs, you really need to think about what that institutional mission is, what those values are, and what the leadership's mission is. What are their values, goals, and priorities? And if you want to read this paper, this is a great paper in academic medicine called Restoring Faculty Vitality in Academic Medicine When Burnout Threatens. And so you really need to think about how these different contexts are working together to ensure that you are thriving and have a sense of vitality in your training and beyond. Mission is also important because now more than ever, medical schools are really thinking about how we recruit. And we understand that admissions, medical school admissions can be a very complex marketplace where some may think, you know, we are competing for the same students, but really what we should be doing, and I believe where medical school admissions is heading, is really trying to identify what our mission is as an institution, as a school, and trying to attract those students who have shared with us who they want to be, how they want to practice medicine, and how they would take advantage of the many opportunities that individual schools have that are really unique, really different. We all fill very different gaps within the healthcare landscape of the country. And so what we want are students who are looking at our school, understanding our mission, and understanding why their own personal mission is aligned with ours. And as admissions officers and as residency selection committees, we know that holistic review, of course, is best practice. And so what we have been able to show is that looking at applicants holistically and trying to understand what those non-cognitive characteristics are that they have shared with us, and trying to understand how those non-cognitive characteristics signal success in our program. So this is a feasible thing that we can do. This is what we are doing. And so it's really going to be incumbent upon you as applicants to share with us not only your mission, but also those, again, those non-cognitive characteristics that make you you, and that could potentially signal success when you are a medical school applicant. Okay, so now I want to move on to realizing and, hold on for 1 second. Yes, sorry. Realizing and communicating your mission. So I encourage you all to ask these necessary questions, right? If you are going to develop your own mission and be able to communicate it, you need to know yourself deeply, and you need to know what you value. What are your values? You need to be able to clearly articulate why medicine, not only why medicine, but why you. Like, why do you feel that you are well suited to become a physician? And then lastly, you have to ask yourself and you have to understand what your personal and professional trajectory has been. Because that is something that we will certainly look at, the trajectory that you have had over the course of your experiences leading up to medicine, to applying to medical school. I like to show this graphic here because when we talk about trajectory, I think especially in medicine, we are a discipline that can oftentimes project this idea that one's trajectory should always be upward and linear. And in reality, that's just not what happens in most cases. And I can tell you that's certainly not what happened in my journey towards medicine. There were so many missteps, and there were so many false starts, and there were so many times that I had to pick myself up and or depended on other people to pick me up and move forward. But the reality of our trajectory, of most people's trajectory, is more often consistent with the bottom half of this graphic. And so what I encourage you to do is really think about your trajectory and how you're framing it, because your trajectory can be your strength. So oftentimes I encounter pre-medical students who experience shame or extreme disappointment in their personal and professional trajectory. But I really would love you to think about your personal trajectory and frame it as your strength. What did you learn? How did you grow? These are the things that we value in medicine, in our medical students, in our residents, and all of our trainees. So as you go through that process, you're going to come to understand what your attributes are. What are those attributes? Remember, we have to ask ourselves, why are we well suited for a career in medicine? And you are going to be able to answer that in a really robust way. And then you move to thinking about, what do you aspire to do? That is something that we want you to be able to communicate in your application and in your interview. So attributes, I just listed several here that are very common attributes that students tell me about. Things like they are effective problem solvers. They are high achieving students. They have an aptitude and affinity for the sciences. And this is definitely something you want to come through, your aptitude and affinity for the sciences. Medicine is a scientific discipline, so that's part of what you need to communicate. Students will tell me about their service orientation, and they'll describe how much they enjoy meaningful interactions. And with regards to aspiration, again, these are just examples, but I really want you to think about this for yourself. Many students going into medicine really want to have a life of service. Again, they want to apply the sciences. They want to have impactful work, and that can take many different forms, right? That can take the form of direct clinical care. It could take the form of advocacy work. It could take the form of research and innovation. You may enjoy team-based practice. Medicine is a team sport. Leadership opportunities. Physicians are the leaders on the team. And you may want opportunities for continuous learning and problem solving. So again, I really want you to think about and really write this down. What are your attributes? What do you aspire to do? And how can you communicate that? So the process of realizing your mission takes time. It takes time. It takes patience, and it takes a lot of exploration. I think the three specific and really important parts of this process includes identifying mentors and role models. Mentors and role models can, they do many different things. They can help you have a vision for yourself that you don't yet have. They may see things in you that you don't yet see. This has been critical in my life. In the positions that I have taken on, my mentors to this day may see things in me or my potential in certain areas that would lead me to take advantage of opportunities. So you really want to identify those mentors and role models. And I understand that can be very difficult. You're a part of this forum right now. This is a great stepping stone to identifying potential mentors and role models. The other thing that you want to do as you go through your professional journey is identify mentors, role models, sponsors that can help you develop and fill the gaps in your skill set that you want to fill. So for instance, I have mentors who are extraordinary leaders, and I really admire their leadership style. And I wanted, especially earlier in my career, to just evolve and become a more effective leader like they were. I have mentors who are researchers, and I learned how to become a successful scholar from those mentors and role models. I've had mentors and role models who were just the most consummate clinicians that I had ever seen. And I really wanted to grow in my clinical skills and emulate them. So think about those things when you're thinking about mentors and role models. Really reach out, identify those people who you think can help you maintain or develop a vision for yourself and help you fill some gaps in your skill set. The process of realizing your mission also takes exploration, right? So we want to make sure that you really understand what you're getting into with medicine. And I continue to espouse medicine as an incredibly fulfilling profession. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I actually do wish I would have explored and been a little more prepared before going into medical school. I wish I had the option to actually take a gap year or more before going into medicine. I think that would have helped my understanding of the profession and of the journey. But exploration, again, will take many different forms, and it could mean that you are exploring medicine from very different facets, like clinical medicine, different clinical settings, inpatient, outpatient, academic, community medicine. It can mean that you're exploring medicine from a scholarly perspective and doing research, or from an advocacy perspective and a service perspective. And then lastly, I touched on this before, but self-reflection. After every experience, during the course of the experience, you really want to think about what you're learning about other people, how you're changing, how these experiences could influence your worldview. And ultimately, what my hope is for you is that by putting these three things together, you'll be able to identify areas of interest within medicine. Identify your talents, realize your motivations, understand the origin of your values, honestly assess your vulnerabilities, identify areas in need of growth, and assess how you are framing your experiences. And the result can be, as you are thinking about applying to medical school or choosing a medical school, you want to have an idea of, who do you think you want to serve? How do you think you want to lead? And what is the setting in which you'd like to work? And again, this is an evolution. This is a process that doesn't just occur when you are a pre-medical student, but you can start thinking about answering these questions as you are on your journey. And I think that the most compelling applicants actually are starting to think about that, and they've communicated that in their application, and they do that in their interview. So now I'm going to shift and talk about the Pritzker School of Medicine, who we are, what we value, what we look for in our applicants. So this is our mission. If you've been to our website, you'll see our mission all over the place. We want you to see it. We want you to know that this is not something that's actually floating around our website. This is something we refer constantly to when we are putting together our classes. This is what we refer to in anything we do within our medical school throughout all of the units. So at the University of Chicago, in an atmosphere of interdisciplinary scholarship and discovery, the Pritzker School of Medicine is dedicated to inspiring diverse students of exceptional promise to become leaders and innovators in science and medicine for the betterment of humanity. I have put different parts of the mission in red because I'm going to break it down a little bit and really share with you what this looks like in the lives of our community, and especially in the work of our students. So what distinguishes the Pritzker School of Medicine? So first, we're in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago. I assume that many of you are zooming in from across the country. You know, I had never actually been to Chicago before I came to interview here, and I have fallen in love with the city. It's just a beautiful city, and I fell in love with the mission of the institution. And I think what distinguishes Pritzker, actually what is a unifying thread, I would say, amongst the faculty and all the trainees, is that we come here in part to serve this patient population. We are surrounded by zip codes that have communities who have suffered from disinvestment, and they have lacked access to care and are largely underserved. That is our patient population, and it is it's our privilege to partner with our patients and our community and learn from them and serve them. And I think that that is one of the main reasons that students actually come to the Pritzker School of Medicine. I think what also distinguishes the Pritzker School of Medicine is our community, and how close-knit they are, and how supportive and collaborative the students are. And to that end, you know, we want to ensure that our students are not competing against each other, that they don't have the need to compare grades or anything like that. So we are a competency-based curriculum. The students are pass-fail in their preclinical curriculum. They earn designators in their clerkship year, but they are still competency-based. So they're never graded against their peers, they're never graded on a curve. And you know, in admissions, we want students who can look at the person next to them and say, I want you to be just as good of a physician as I am, because it's bigger than you. What we are looking to do is move patient care forward, move scholarship and innovation forward, and advocate for our communities. And so we're really not looking for students who are going to compete against their peers. And I think the Pritzker School of Medicine is known for having a very special community where, again, the students are so close. It's a family-like environment. They're so supportive of one another. We do have a small class size. We have one of the smallest class sizes in the country, actually, and this facilitates a lot. This facilitates our scholarship dollars going very far. We're committed to ensuring our students graduate with minimal debt. That small class size ensures that each and every one of our students gets the mentoring and advising that very individualized mentoring and advising that they need to develop into the physicians that they want to be. And we take that mentorship and advising incredibly seriously. And the students oftentimes choose Pritzker because they know that they're not going to just be a number, that we know all of our students. And if you're a student who really doesn't want anybody to know your name, this is definitely not the place for us. We know our students, we know when they're thriving, we know when we need to come alongside them and help them and lift them up. That's the type of community that we are. So I mentioned that most, if not every person who comes to work here and train here has at least as a part of their motivation, serving and partnering with the Southside community. So I shared a little bit about who we serve. We're on the South Side of Chicago. We are the only tertiary care center on the South Side of Chicago. And again, you know, a lot of our patients have suffered from generational oppression and marginalization that has limited their access to not only medical care, but to an education, to other resources, that would ensure their livelihood. And so this is a patient population that we serve and are committed to serving and partnering with. And then our patients come from across the region, across the nation, across the world to receive their care here. So it's a very diverse mix of patients And our students are really taught to not reside in any ivory tower, but to really understand that they must be in partnership with the communities that they serve. And there's so many ways in which our students partner. I've just listed a few here. And then lastly, the students who come here understand the impact of the University of Chicago within the broader Chicago healthcare landscape and the national landscape. So when we are looking for students, we are looking for students who have a motivation to serve the underserved. It's part of what we look for in the application. We want to look for students who have, if they haven't had the experience serving the underserved or partnering with communities unlike themselves, then we look for how they've talked about this in their essays, both in their primary essays and in the secondary essays. So intellectual curiosity, we talked, I shared with you that scholarship and discovery is a part of our institutional mission. It is a part of the core curriculum of our students when they come to Pritzker. So they do research. Again, they all have to do research. And the students come in with varying degrees of exposure to research. Ultimately what we're looking for is not necessarily research productivity. We are looking for intellectual curiosity. Sometimes we see that in the letter writers, in those references, and they write about the students and they talk about the intellectual curiosity. And sometimes we see it within the students' research experiences or other types of scholarly experiences where we can see that there's an intellectual curiosity there, that they want to ask questions, that they want to go about a systematic way of answering them. But I would say that in part, most of our students, in large part, our students come here because they know that they're going to have that mentored research that will allow them to be productive. And they're not productive just because it's a part of their core curriculum. They're productive because we do the work to ensure that they are finding their passion within research. And there are just a few examples of some of our students, and I just chose a spattering of very different research projects. Our students are wildly successful in their publications. This is Meredith, and she does research on opioid use disorder. This is Michael's son, and he did a research project on understanding if Black patients more oftentimes in the chart had negative descriptors. He partnered with Dr. Monica Peak and Dr. Elizabeth Tong. If you've heard of them, they are world-renowned healthcare disparities researchers. And this is Melanique, and Melanique does translational research on the microbiome. So just wanted to give you some examples, but I would say that most students actually don't come into Pritzker knowing exactly what they want to do within research. But again, because of that student-faculty ratio, we can give the students the attention and the mentoring they need to find out what it is they're passionate about, and we meet you where you are. So we just really want to see that intellectual curiosity come through. We also want students who are going to value the clinical training that we provide here. At the University of Chicago, we're one of the top 10 most inclusive hospital systems in the country. And what that means is that our inpatient and outpatient population reflects the communities around us. So we're welcoming in our community. We're a leader in LGBTQ+ healthcare. We've been designated as that. And we are providing just the highest quality care in the safest possible environment, always through a lens of equity. And that hence our grade A leapfrog rating. So these are just a few of the things that our students are really driven to take advantage of because we are, again, working within such a collaborative and supportive environment, but one that is committed to equity and justice as well as excellence for our patients. A lot of the students will talk in their application when they're applying to Pritzker about our free clinics. And actually, to my knowledge, no other medical school has more free clinics than we do. And the free clinics are very unique here because they are all situated in very different neighborhoods. So they provide the students with really robust exposure to very unique, very different patient populations. And so when Pritzker students leave here, I never feel like they are unprepared for the cultural and ethnic diversity of our country, because they have been exposed to so many different types of patients, and we value that. We think it's necessary in our training. So we do want students who want that as a part of their training. When we are looking at applications and we are looking at who to interview and we're looking at how to assess applicants for admission, we do look for demonstrations of leadership or leadership potential, because our students leave us better than when they found us. There's so many ways in which they lead, but for our pre-medical students, we're just looking for indicators or those signals that you could come here and make an impact, or that you would really want to be involved with our community and make an impact, whether it's the school, whether it is Chicago or the South Side of Chicago. We're looking for students who have those demonstrations of leadership. And I think one of the beautiful things about the experience of our students here is that we want them to be whole and well when they come to the Pritzker School of Medicine. We want them to be whole and well when they graduate from the Pritzker School of Medicine. Our curriculum is designed to keep them well. Our wellness committee and our wellness programming is designed to keep them well. And so when we're looking at applications, we do want to see, what you do with your free time. Like, what do you do for fun? How do you release stress? And a lot of students have those extracurriculars that bring them joy. We want you to continue to be you. And so we want students who are going to have those activities that, again, bring them joy, keep them well, allow them to minimize their stress throughout the medical school experience. So I want to touch on interviewing, because I want to drive home the fact that interviewing is a skill. Like, you have to practice if you are going to be effective at being interviewed. And there are a few steps that I'd just like to outline for you to best prepare you, I think, to be interviewed and to leave a great impression. So the first thing that we want you to do is some pre-interview reflection. You want to answer these 4 questions, and you want to answer it comprehensively, not that you're going to be asked these questions specifically, but I think you're going to be able to answer a variety of questions in a really substantive way if you can answer and know yourself really, really well. Answer these questions and know yourself well. So how will your background allow you to contribute meaningfully to a medical school class? How did your experiences grow and change you? How have your experiences contributed to your development as a learner? And recognizing that this will evolve. What is your mission within medicine, and how does this specific school, whether it's the Pritzker School of Medicine or another school that you are interviewing at, how does this school align with your personal mission? And so that's why you have to go through the process of realizing or starting to realize your mission. You want to do some pre-interview practice. This does not mean you have to practice with a family member. You can practice with a friend. Give them a list of questions. And really what you're trying to understand is, how do you come off? Are the length of your answers appropriate? Is the content of your answers compelling? Do you come off as someone who is engaging and is able to connect with their interviewer? So you really want to do some practice before you interview. And the thing is, with interviewing, especially over Zoom, is that you want to be prepared, but you don't want to sound overly rehearsed. So there's a gentle balance here, and that's why you want to practice and understand from a different someone else's perspective how you come off on Zoom. Always research the school. Research the school, understand their mission, understand the opportunities that appeal to you and those things that you would want to take advantage of. Familiarize yourself with the virtual interview platform. It is true that especially over the next cycle, some schools will be going in person, or it may be hybrid. The University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine will not be. We will be virtual. In my opinion, for the foreseeable future, just to minimize costs for students and facilitate students, no matter where they are, being able to interview with us. And then, I understand, and I've been there, this process of interviewing is a very high stakes process, right? You feel it. I have such great compassion because, again, I remember being a pre-med and I remember the process of interviewing. But I encourage you to create a ritual to minimize your anxiety and distractions, because only then can you effectively communicate who you are and who you want to be in medicine, and be able to draw on all of those experiences that you have to illustrate your motivation for medicine. So I encourage you to create that ritual. Interview day. Be on time, always be on time, be early, actually, be a few minutes early. When you are virtually interviewing, camera on all the time. You want to be able to engage and connect with whoever is speaking with you. Be flexible. Remember that physicians are interviewing you and things happen with patients. And so sometimes, very infrequently, we may have a surgeon who gets called to the OR. We may have a physician who needs to go to the ICU to round on a patient. And if that happens to your interviewer, you want to just be flexible, know that they're going to reschedule you, and you want to just demonstrate that flexibility. When you're being interviewed, one pitfall that I see sometimes is that interviewees want to answer the question that they want to answer as opposed to the question that's asked. And that is because, and I totally understand it, it's because you want to hit those high points of your application. What you want to do is answer the question that is asked. And if there are experiences that you can draw from them to illustrate your point, but always answer the question that's being asked. Be mindful of interviewer cues. So this is really important, especially on Zoom. Your interviewer may give you cues that your answers are too long and it's time to wrap up, or they may give you cues that your answers are not long enough and you need more substance. And that you'll see that if they continue to ask you follow-up questions about the same topic. And then always be prepared to ask your interviewers questions. You're always going to have questions about what the training environment is like. We want you to ask those questions about what are the opportunities like, what is the curriculum like, what are the scholarly opportunities like? So you want to be able to ask those questions on your interview day to your interviewers. Okay, that brings me to the end of my slides. I'm going to stop sharing, and I am happy to try to answer any questions.
Yeah, the first question is, well, what is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor?
A sponsor is a person who will put your name out there for opportunities. So for instance, I may have sponsors who are higher level leaders, and they may hear about something and they'll say, have you heard of Keme Carter? I think she would be great for this, right? So it's someone who will put your name out there and advocate for you to take advantage of different opportunities. And a mentor is very different. A mentor-mentee relationship is often mutually beneficial. They are investing regularly in your development in a variety of ways. It can be a research mentor, it can be a clinical mentor, but you often will receive benefit in the form of skills and knowledge and guidance from mentors. And in part, a lot of times the mentee is actually able to contribute to the work of the mentor.
Perfect. And then leading on to the next question is, how do you manage having multiple mentors at once? And would they get jealous?
Definitely not. No. Mentors want you. So a good mentor wants you to be successful, right? They want you to develop in the way that you want to develop. And jealousy is never a part of that. Because mentors, again, are oftentimes providing different skill sets, and they're contributing to your development in very different ways. And so what our dean always tells our students is that they have a board of directors when they come to Pritzker. They will have a cohort of mentors and advisors who are actually working together with them for the student to help them along their journey. So I wouldn't be concerned about that at all.
And the other thing is that also about managing multiple, because everybody has a different talent or a different area of expertise. And so this is another question in terms of mentorship. Are students automatically placed in a mentor group once admitted at University of Chicago, or do they have to find their own?
No, they are actually, so the way I describe it is we have our students experience a small family within a family. So when they come to Pritzker, we actually place them in one of 4 societies. That is their smaller family, where they have 2 faculty advisors and they have peer mentoring, because they're with students who are at different phases of medical school training. And so they get that advising and mentoring, and then the faculty society advisor is really responsible for helping students identify their other mentors and guiding them towards their specialty choice and things like that. So our students, I would say that it's the actual opposite. Our students often at times say, okay, I think I'm good. I don't need any more mentors. But we have a very structured mentor system that allows students to connect with and leverage the resources of the faculty here.
So we've got a couple of questions, and I call it the secret sauce. Is that what is people want to know, how do they stand out? How do they make the application? And I basically coined the term, what's the secret sauce, the formula for them, for their application to stand out.
For their application to stand out?
Yeah.
Again, the most compelling applications are students who have done adequate exploration but communicate their mission effectively. They haven't, the most compelling students tell a story that makes sense. For instance, it's more compelling for me to read about how students have framed experiences, how they have grown from those experiences, learned what they learned about themselves, about others, when they're talking about their experiences. When I'm talking about the experiences, there is an area on the AMCAS applications where you actually list and describe your experiences. You're able to identify some as your most significant experiences, but the most compelling applications are the students have given thought to how they write about their experiences. They didn't just check a box and say, okay, research, I did that. Their writing is mature and thoughtful, which is why it's so important for you to have other people read your essays. And the other thing that will stand out to me is, as you know, you have a primary essay that goes on your common application, your AMCAS app, and then you'll be invited to submit a secondary application, which is very institution specific. And so when we ask questions on the secondary, we actually really want to know, why are you applying to us? I think a big mistake is when you cut and paste essays from another school into another school's secondary application, because sometimes it's really obvious that you've done that and you haven't given thought about who we are, what our mission is, and how you align with that. So adequate exploration, writing thoughtfully, making sure that you research the school and you've answered the secondary questions appropriately.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. This is another question. How can we show leadership potential through activities for which we didn't expect to have leadership role? And just define leadership role, because a lot of people think that being a president of an organization is leadership versus I personally like to say, in my job is the people that are like the leaders or the EVS crew that clean the trauma rooms and the rooms and get them ready, because if they're not doing their job. So what is leadership and how does that define on your application, and what do you look for?
Yeah, leadership can be defined roles. It doesn't have to be defined roles. Really I think leaders are members of a team who get to know the talents and the skills of their team, and in some way, shape or form, help guide the team towards their common goal, right? That's what a leader does. And so there are experiences that I have read about where the students don't have explicit defined titles, but what they say is, I was in charge of making posters and I led a committee where we had to do X, Y, and Z, and they talk about their leadership skills and things like that. So that's how I would define leadership, and it can take many different forms.
This is another question. There's a lot of questions in the Q&A about numbers and people asking what's the GPA and MCAT, and then also kind of following up with grades. How do you overcome a rough start or your first year doing poorly and then, improving, and how do you convey that?
And that's exactly what I wanted to get across with the trajectory slide. You really, there's a lot of data available to you all, and some of my writing and advocacy has really is really advocating for schools to let students know like the range of metrics that they take or that they historically have taken, and what they think is compatible with success. So really what you want to look at is the range of scores that schools take. Don't like the median, the mean. That's not going to be representative of the range of the scores that that schools will take. And I want you to know, I want you to hear that many students have rough starts. I am one of them, as I described in my journey, but I really wanted to share that with you to normalize it. Physical chemistry, like I never want to ever see or hear about that class again, except when I'm reading it in your application. Ultimately you have to frame your trajectory and understand how you've come out stronger. We do value trajectory. And so I think most schools, I would say that my colleagues across the country are really looking to understand what the trajectory has been. Have you demonstrated competency in the sciences, right? Like that's ultimately what we want to answer.
Great. And some people wanted to ask about outreach and pipeline summer programs.
Yes.
I will put the link in the chat. We've also posted them in the fall when they were available and over Christmas break on our social media, and I put the links there as well. But can you talk a little bit about those? And
yes, apply to our pipeline programs. Okay, so we have one pipeline program that's residential, like you live on campus and you get a stipend. That is PSOMER, the Pritzker School of Medicine Experience and Research. So you are actually paired with a faculty member, and you'll do research with that faculty member over the summer. And then we have 2 other pipeline programs, Camp 1 and Camp 2. They're just different based on the phase of your pre-medical career. And this is sort of like a comprehensive, little bit of mini medical school, a lot of advising, really getting you ready, a lot of clinical exposure, really getting you ready to apply to medical school. So we have those 3, really look into those. And just note the deadlines, the historical deadlines.
Absolutely. And this is another question again. How do you turn your weaknesses into strength in your application?
So this is exactly what you have to do through the process of reflection. So, if you have, let's say, a lower GPA, and that's the GPA you have, and it may be that GPA isn't going to change, you have to still be able to communicate that, yes, whatever influenced your GPA at a certain point in your journey, but you have developed better study habits. You have developed an ability to ask for help. You have grown as a learner in your scientific foundation. Like, that's the type of thing that I want you to think about. Yes, like, the reality is the reality, but what did you learn? How did you grow? And what is your truth right now, that you believe about yourself? So that is how I would do that.
So this is actually something else that has been in a lot of blogs and postings is proving that you could handle the rigors of medical curriculum and taking 5, bio, organic chemistry, physics, physical chemistry, all in 1 quarter. Is that how you showed that you could handle the rigors of medical school, or how do you prove that? Because a lot of people are putting that in the blogs, and people are not doing well.
I mean, so one thing that you're intimating at is, like, does course load determine whether or not you can handle the rigor of science? And the answer to that is, like, don't be excessive. Like, ultimately, if you are only taking one science course at a time, I think the reality is the volume of science that you're going to absorb in medical school is going to be much greater than that. So you want to be able to, don't be excessive and take, all of these hard courses at the same time. Be reasonable and show that you can manage more than one or multiple. And then it really comes down to the grade trajectory as well.
This is another question in terms of non-traditional students and older students. Is there cutoff for age?
Oh my gosh, no. That's first of all, that's illegal. So I would hope that nobody would do that. And second of all, I want you guys to understand. So I went straight through. And again, I just want to reinforce that if I had the opportunity to not go straight through in hindsight, I would. So our medical school class actually reflects what the national pool is like now. So 2/3 of our students are non-traditional, and 1/3 are traditional. And that's in the entire medical school class. I think it was actually a smaller percentage in the current first-year class.
This is also another question somebody asked is, how do you portray that if you have a learning disability or childhood trauma, is that going to affect you, or even mental health challenges? Maybe you've taken a quarter off to self-care. How does that impact, and are you looked at negatively?
If you have a mental health struggle or
learning disability,
again, this is about how you frame it. right? Okay, and I will preface this by saying I can't speak for every admissions officer out there throughout the country. And I will admit again that medicine has historically been incredibly rigid. But I personally, and our team personally, sees such value in the resilience of students who have worked to overcome or manage successfully their mental health struggles and their learning struggles. And it's super compelling, honestly, when it's super compelling, honestly, when a student is able to say, okay, like, this is what happened early in my academic career. I identified myself, or I got help and realized I had a learning disability. I, have used the strategies and look what I did. And the same is true for students who have overcome mental health struggles. Like, have you been able to reach out for help and leverage that help? And have you developed really healthy strategies to help to manage your mental health? Those things are compelling.
But also getting help for mental health challenges is a sign of strength and not weakness.
Yeah, I mean, actually, what you are seeing now, and this is certainly what we do. Like, even when I talk to applicants on their first day, with interview day with us, I always say that we need to normalize therapy. Therapy should be normalized. And where I'm sitting right now, I can actually see student counseling. And this is where we oftentimes have students go right across the street to ensure that they have a therapist. And it's a healthy thing. It's a good thing, and we need to destigmatize it. But I recognize that medicine has historically shunned these demonstrations of vulnerability. And I don't think that that's a good thing, but I can't speak for how every school views students who reveal that about themselves.
There's questions about people that want to do MD, PhD, MD, MPH, MD, all the other, and how is that done at University of Chicago?
Yeah, the primary thing that we're going to be looking for the MSTP students is your research. I mean, you have to have clinical exposure. You have to be compelling and show us, like, why do you want to do the clinical part of it? But the way that we screen applications is the MSTP group will screen applications. I will screen the applications, and then we'll come together and agree. So the MSTP group has to say, this student wants to do immunology. What they want to do is very much aligned with our strengths. And then I'll look at the application and I'll say, this student has had really great clinical exposure. They have compelling experiences otherwise that we really value. Let's offer them an interview. But in order for you to be a successful MSTP candidate, you have to have the long-term research that has shown that you want to be a physician scientist, right? You want to have that, like, typical 70-30 breakdown between lab and clinic, because MSTP programs, their grants are actually like, at least they have to report how many of their students go out and actually are physician scientists, as opposed to abandoning that track. So you really have to show robust continued research.
So people want to know about doing research, taking research here, and research opportunities for medical students, and is that available?
Just so I know I understand the question.
Like, if you, as a medical student, if you want to do research, is there opportunities available? If you want to do a research here without an MD, PhD, is that available? And other opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, so just to be clear, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, am I?
No.
Okay, good. Okay.
I took it off.
Okay, thank you. So our students are our MD only students, are the students I'm referring to, are so wildly successful at research because of the structured mentorship, and because their research is longitudinal. So they actually have focused, protected, and funded time to do research throughout the curriculum where they're doing nothing else. They're not doing any of the other foundational sciences. They're not doing anything else but their research. So they all have like a 3-month block of time, then they'll have another 2-month block of time later. And this really helps to ensure that they have that longitudinal experience and that they're going to have a scholarly product by the time they apply to the match.
Perfect. And then the other part of it too is people wanted to know if you have in-state, if you care for in-state or out-of-state.
No, we don't favor either. We are a private school, so we look at all the students the same.
Yeah, and going back to the research thing, if you know anything about University of Chicago, like some of the most important research in the last 150 years happened there. A lot of, so there is, so yeah. So I've never been, I've driven on campus, but anything you know about history of science and medicine, University of Chicago has like done some major things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there is a lot of research labs and research experience in and outside of the School of Medicine to heart desires.
And the other thing that I want you all to hear is that the research can be very interdisciplinary because we are situated on the broader university campus. So yes, a lot of our students do clinical research. They do community-based research like healthcare disparities research. But they are also doing research in the social sciences. They will partner with students or graduate students or faculty in the School of Social Sciences, or they'll partner with economics professors at the Booth School of Business. They have the opportunity to build connections that are interdisciplinary to do their research. Again, we help them find their passion. We ensure they have the time to do it. And that's why when you compare our students to the national average, they publish so much more. They have those scholarly products that are reflected in the graph that I showed you earlier.
The other question was, does Pritzker School of Medicine accept DACA students and undocumented students?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think the thing I want you to hear about that is, again, we have a very robust scholarship awarding system. And we also have institutional loans. And so we have DACA students and international students who are in our student body. There are DACA students and international students that I am working really hard to recruit right now into our class. And we are able to put together very compelling scholarship awards to fund those students.
This is also a couple of questions that have been in the Q&A, and it's also widely available on the myths blogs and things. Is that is it true that University of Chicago is only looking for volunteer clinical experience and not paid?
Oh, I've actually never heard that question before. No, I mean, absolutely not. Like, I think that the reality is that students need to live, like pre-medical students need to live. And there are so many applicants who will find this, like these really robust experiences. They may be paid, they may not be, but ultimately, when we're looking at applications, I want you to understand, like, we are looking at what the students did with the resources that they had. That's how we train our reviewers. What do they do with the resources that they had? And when we take that approach, we understand, like, some students absolutely have to work. And they may choose to do really important work that is funded. And that is absolutely okay.
The personal statement, this is another question. What is your opinion about focusing on a single experience or multiple link experiences related to why medicine and connecting it to a central theme? Do you want just to talk about one thing or multiple things on your personal statement?
I think both can be fine. The reason that the personal statement it takes a long time to compose and draft and come up with a final draft is because students really need to balance describing why they are well suited with being other-centered, right? Being focused on the patient. Because a personal statement that is not truly palatable to me is when a student is like, I did this, and then I did that, and I'm this, and I'm that, and their focus is not on the patient at all. Like, the focus needs to be on the patient. So you tie in your experiences and you make it patient-centered. I would say that in my opinion, most essays are probably tying in a few experiences.
Great. And this is a couple of questions around COVID-19. People wanted to know, during COVID-19, they had to take online classes, and would the University of Chicago require them to take it again in person? And also, what if COVID-19 has impacted your health, your family's health, but also not being able to have clinical experiences?
Yeah.
How is that going to impact your decision?
So a few questions in there. You do not, I have not heard of a medical school having one retake classes. I think that most places, at least, again, my colleagues that I've spoken with around the country are doing the same thing we are doing, and that is accepting pass-fail classes, accepting the classes that students had to take during COVID that were online. But again, you're going to have to show in some way, shape, or form that you can, like, that all of your science is not pass-fail. We need to have some sort of idea whether, it is, a couple of grades or some grades that you are prepared for the rigor of the curriculum. And the other question was, do we take into account how students have been impacted by COVID? Absolutely. And like on our secondary application, one of the questions is, please describe to us how COVID has impacted your experiences in any way that you want to describe. And so we wanted to provide that platform because COVID has influenced students in a variety of different ways, and it continues to have enduring impact on students. I would say that as the years go by, we are seeing less and less of an impact of COVID on different experiences. So now students are back in the clinical setting, and they're back in the lab and all these things. They're back serving in person, but we give you the opportunity to describe on your secondary application how COVID has impacted you personally.
And I put the link. We did 2 talks on clinical experience and shadowing and all that stuff, and it's in our chat, and you can take a look at it. It's both of them together. It's about 4 hours, so I can't shorten it. Some people asked about University of Chicago, Pritzker withdrawing from U.S. World News, and how is that impacting medical students for residency?
It is one of the best decisions I've seen our leaders make during my tenure as a physician here. I'm so proud of us for doing this and taking this step. I've written about it. You can read my thoughts on U.S. News and World Report. My article came out in JAMA last week, so you can read about what my thoughts are. And the thing that I need you to understand about the Pritzker graduate is U.S. News and World Report we know who we are. We know what our value is. We know and believe in how, as an institution, we can help to fill those gaps in the healthcare landscape that I talked about earlier. We know we have a proven track record of graduating extraordinary physicians who go on to do amazing things. And we know that our students match incredibly well. It has nothing to do with U.S. News and World Report. It has everything to do with who our students become and what they accomplish when they're here. and the legacy that we have at the University of Chicago for graduating the most exceptional clinicians and advocates and scholars. That's what matters. And ultimately, what we believe in here is that there should be no incentive to dissuade us from working to matriculate the most mission-aligned and excellent students who are going to take advantage of the opportunities that we have here. So I believe deeply in what we did, and you can read more about my beliefs in the article that was published if you want to.
Yeah, I put the link in the chat. This is the another one is University of Chicago has changed their curriculum.
Yes.
And can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, we're so excited about this. So the things that we have changed, we've maintained all of the amazing things about our curriculum, which is the longitudinal scholarship curriculum that ensures that our students have a scholarly product by the time they apply to match. But we have shortened the preclinical curriculum so that students start their core clerkships earlier, but we have done it in a way that also provides substantive experience for students in the clinical setting during their foundational science or pre-clerkship year. So our students are taking on, so they actually start with an immersion where they have a class that's longitudinal throughout the first autumn quarter on health equity, advocacy, and anti-racism. We were actually one of the first schools to have a required course like that. And that is a key feature of our curriculum that will remain. We have added value-added roles for our students in the pre-clerkship phase. So our students are going into the clinical setting. They are actually taking on roles that will bring value to patient care. The curriculum is very integrated with the different disciplines that allowed us to shorten the preclinical year. And again, they're starting the clerkship year earlier. Really exciting. And we're really happy with it.
This is a question about secondaries, and are they automatic secondaries? There's like several of them. And then what insight would you give to secondaries and the importance of them at Pritzker?
Secondaries are so important because really that is how I understand whether or not a student has researched our school and whether or not they feel that the mission is compelling. So secondaries are so important. Take time to really think about the essays and write your essays well. So, you know, if a student writes a paragraph and it really is clear that they took no time to do that, or it was cut and pasted from another application, that's not compelling. So we want you to understand that secondaries are really important. And for us, everyone gets a secondary. And if we'll waive the fee for anybody who asks. So if you just ask that you know, you need the fee assistance, anybody who needs fee assistance can just ask us, and we encourage that students to communicate with us. We don't want finances to be a barrier to applying.
Okay, and then this is like 5 questions about letters of recommendation. And would a mentor for scholarship program, non-science letters, how many science letters, can graduate students write letters? Why are letters of recommendation important? There's like a whole list of them. And so I'm just trying to, for the sake of time.
Yeah, so okay, I'm just gonna lay out a few things about letters of recommendation. They are important because it gives us an idea of how other people perceive you, your potential, and your work. And so it is always best to ask letter writers to write letters for you who know you, that you've gotten to know. You need, you know, different schools may have different policies, but one science letter is adequate for us. And we oftentimes do recognize that, especially in big undergraduate institutions, it's sometimes hard to get to know your science professor, but we want you to have one science letter, and then the rest of the letters are people who know you. So we see letters from humanities professors, we see letters from research mentors, we see letters from bosses, like, you know, if you're engaged in service, we see letters from like the leaders of nonprofits. We see letters from clinicians that you worked with, sometimes with scribes, you know, they'll have those people, those physicians write letters. So we see it from a variety of different people. And they make a difference. They absolutely do. Because they show us again, how you're perceived, what your potential is like, and they can also help us to understand your level of intellectual curiosity and your interpersonal skills. So I love the letters that talk about how kind and empathetic and warm applicants are. So if they can speak to your interpersonal skills, that is also incredibly compelling.
Okay, this is like probably 7 questions into one, and this is just and this is the last one because I have to go, and I just looked at the time, and it's like 7 p.m. where you are, and you have a family. So so this is the question, and we get it all the time, and it's every single week. How many hours do they have to have for clinical hours, volunteering, leadership, research? Like, this is like a lot of these like quantitative things. And can you explain a little bit about qualitative versus quantitative for all of these things?
Yeah, I can't give you hours. I will say 10 hours is too few. I think that your clinical experience, I mean, I think it is, I think it really depends on, you know, what stratifies clinical experiences is if you've had direct engagement with physicians and direct engagement with patient care. Like, those are going to be the most compelling types of clinical experiences. I can't tell you hours, but I think maybe more than 100 hours have historically been what oftentimes students will have, apart from COVID. And now it's just a matter of like what you had the opportunity to do. And if you gained an understanding of the role of the physician and the experiences of the patient, like you have to personally understand that. And the same thing with service. I mean, I think service is important because you are learning about the experiences of another human who oftentimes does not have the same background as you, or maybe does, but you are learning about the experiences of other humans, and you are working and partnering with those other people. And so it really depends, like, you know, a week is not that compelling. Long-term service is more compelling. Over a period of a year or many months or a year is more compelling. When you have service that looks like, okay, you did a week here, you did a week there, and I can't connect the dots, like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so it has to be a part of your story that makes sense, right? Why did you do the service? And what did you learn? Again, how did you evolve? How did you partner? And so those things have to come through.
Yeah, and I think this is a follow-up question about the 15 slots. You know, if you are going once a year for 2 hours, doing, you know, feeding the homeless on Thanksgiving versus spending the whole year preparing for that, it's a whole different thing, different way that you could put that on your application. Any other words of wisdom you have? We have a couple more questions, but I think there were some of them are repeated. But any words of wisdom you have before we depart?
I just want you all to really believe in your worth and believe in your potential contributions to serve the suffering. And I want you to hold on to that. And I want you to be able to understand that sometimes the world tells you things that aren't true about yourself, and you need to be able to identify those lies and speak truth. And I encourage you all to do that. And I wish you the very best. And I look forward to having many of you as colleagues, although I'll probably be retired, hopefully, you know, in the next 20 years or so. So I just wanted to provide that level of encouragement.